He stood in the polished boardroom wearing a faded work jacket and a scratched $12 watch. The CEO glanced at his wrist, laughed in front of everyone, and asked how someone dressed like that expected to earn respect in a billion-dollar company. Seconds later, the elderly chairman slowly rose from his seat, stared at the cheap watch with tears filling his eyes, and whispered words that froze every person in the room. "That watch saved my life." In an instant, the laughter disappeared, and a secret buried for more than 20 years began to change every life in that room forever. Before we begin this unforgettable journey, if you believe kindness is stronger than pride, forgiveness is more powerful than revenge, and everyone deserves a second chance, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our growing community. The headquarters of Harrow Dynamics stood proudly in the center of the city, surrounded by glass towers that reflected the bright afternoon sun. Employees admired the building because it represented success, innovation, and opportunity, but many also feared the woman who led it. CEO Vivian Mercer had earned a reputation for making difficult decisions without hesitation. Investors praised her confidence, magazines celebrated her achievements, and competitors respected her intelligence, yet very few people knew the loneliness hidden beneath her polished appearance. Since inheriting leadership after her mother's retirement, Vivian had become obsessed with perfection. She believed appearances reflected discipline, and discipline determined success. Anyone who looked careless immediately lost her respect. That same morning, a maintenance contractor named Rowan Ellis entered the building carrying a weathered toolbox. He wasn't there to impress anyone. He simply wanted to repair an aging climate control system that several expensive engineering firms had failed to fix. Rowan had spent most of his adult life restoring machines others considered beyond saving. Years earlier he had worked as a mechanical engineer until a factory accident injured his shoulder and changed his career forever. Instead of giving up, he built a small repair business, believing honest work mattered more than impressive titles. His clothes showed years of labor, his boots carried scratches from countless workshops, and on his wrist rested a simple $12 digital watch protected by a cracked plastic cover. Few people noticed that Rowan occasionally touched the watch with quiet appreciation, almost as if it carried memories too valuable to replace. Vivian happened to walk through the engineering floor while Rowan examined the damaged equipment. She stopped when she noticed him standing beside several senior managers. Her eyes immediately drifted toward his old jacket and then settled on the inexpensive watch around his wrist. Without asking about his experience or qualifications, she smiled with cold amusement. Several executives looked away, already sensing what was coming. Vivian remarked loudly that someone wearing a $12 watch probably shouldn't be trusted with equipment worth millions. She suggested the company should hire professionals who looked successful instead of people who looked like they had wandered in from a garage sale. A few uncomfortable laughs echoed through the room. Rowan simply lowered his eyes. He had experienced judgment before and understood that arguing rarely changed proud hearts. Instead, he quietly continued inspecting the damaged machinery while the executives watched with doubtful expressions. Unknown to everyone present, the company's aging chairman, Graham Ashcroft, had arrived early for an afternoon strategy meeting. Moving more slowly than he once had, Graham preferred walking through different departments before important meetings because he believed every employee deserved to be seen. As he approached the engineering floor, he heard Vivian's final remark about the cheap watch. His attention shifted toward Rowan's wrist. The chairman suddenly stopped walking. His breathing became uneven. His face lost all color. For several long seconds he stared at the scratched plastic watch before whispering almost to himself that it couldn't possibly still exist. Everyone turned toward him in confusion. Graham slowly walked closer until he stood directly before Rowan. His trembling hands reached toward the watch without touching it. Tears began forming in the eyes of the respected businessman who had built one of the country's largest companies. His voice barely rose above a whisper as he said the words no one expected. "That watch saved my life." Silence filled the enormous room. Vivian's confident expression disappeared. Employees exchanged confused glances. Rowan looked equally surprised because almost nobody outside his family knew the story behind the watch. More than 2 decades earlier, Graham had been an ambitious executive visiting an industrial manufacturing plant considering a major investment. During the inspection, a catastrophic equipment failure triggered a chain reaction that filled part of the building with smoke and collapsing steel. Workers panicked as emergency alarms echoed through the factory. Among the younger engineers was Rowan, then only in his 20s. While others escaped, Rowan noticed Graham trapped beneath fallen metal beams. Emergency responders couldn't immediately reach the area because unstable machinery threatened another collapse. Ignoring repeated warnings, Rowan crawled through twisted debris toward the injured executive. The smoke was so thick that visibility nearly vanished. The only reliable timer Rowan carried was the inexpensive waterproof watch he had purchased earlier that week from a roadside discount store. Rescue teams had warned that dangerous chemical tanks nearby could rupture after several minutes of uncontrolled heat exposure. Watching every precious second on that cheap digital display, Rowan coordinated workers, timed safe movements between structural shifts, and finally managed to free Graham moments before another section of the building crashed behind them. Later, when reporters praised Graham's miraculous survival, Rowan quietly returned to work without seeking recognition. He refused interviews, accepted no rewards, and never contacted Graham again. The chairman had searched for him afterward but discovered Rowan had resigned following his shoulder injury months later. Records were incomplete after the factory eventually closed. The only detail Graham never forgot was the scratched plastic watch that counted the minutes separating life from death. Standing inside Harrow Dynamics decades later, Graham recognized every scratch. He turned toward Vivian with gentle disappointment rather than anger. He explained that expensive watches could measure time, but only courage gave time meaning. He reminded everyone that character could never be judged by clothing, wealth, or appearance. Vivian felt her face burn with shame. For perhaps the first time in years, she realized her assumptions had wounded someone whose integrity exceeded her own. Instead of leaving, Rowan quietly returned to repairing the damaged system. No dramatic celebration followed. No applause filled the room. Only thoughtful silence remained. Curious engineers stayed nearby watching him work. Within 2 hours Rowan solved the malfunction that several consulting firms had failed to diagnose after weeks of expensive investigations. He patiently explained that one overlooked valve had gradually damaged the entire cooling sequence. The solution wasn't complicated once someone stopped trying to impress others and simply listened to what the machinery was saying. Even experienced technicians admitted they had overlooked the obvious because they focused on costly replacements instead of simple understanding. Vivian watched from a distance. For the first time, she paid attention not to Rowan's clothes but to the calm confidence behind every movement. She noticed how respectfully he treated junior employees, how willingly he answered questions, and how he never spoke arrogantly despite possessing remarkable expertise. That afternoon Graham invited Rowan to join the executive luncheon. Rowan almost declined, uncomfortable around luxury he no longer considered important. Eventually he accepted. During lunch Graham learned that Rowan's wife had passed away several years earlier after battling illness. Medical expenses had consumed nearly everything they owned. Rowan had sold expensive possessions one by one but refused to replace the $12 watch because it reminded him that life's greatest value was measured in moments shared with people, not in possessions. He explained that his late wife used to smile whenever someone mocked the watch. She would gently say that the world often confused price with value. Those words struck Vivian deeply. She remembered growing up believing achievement required flawless appearances because that was how investors treated her family. Somewhere along the journey she had forgotten that businesses existed to serve people rather than impress them. The following weeks became unexpectedly transformative. Instead of immediately offering Rowan a prestigious executive position, Graham asked him to mentor engineering teams and review company culture. Rowan agreed only after insisting he wanted practical improvements instead of honorary titles. He visited every department. He listened more than he spoke. He learned employees often hid mistakes because they feared humiliation. Young technicians hesitated to suggest simple solutions around senior management. Maintenance workers felt invisible despite preventing costly disasters every day. Gradually, small changes began reshaping the company. Managers started recognizing behind-the-scenes employees. Training sessions focused on respect alongside technical skills. Executives spent time working beside maintenance crews to understand daily challenges. Morale steadily improved. Productivity increased. Employee turnover declined. Investors praised results without realizing the greatest transformation wasn't financial but human. Vivian herself changed the most. She began arriving earlier to greet receptionists, custodians, and security staff by name. She visited workshops without cameras or publicity. Instead of judging appearances, she asked about families, dreams, and obstacles. Months later, she quietly visited Rowan's modest repair shop carrying a carefully wrapped gift. Inside rested a luxury Swiss watch worth thousands of dollars. Rowan smiled warmly but gently declined. He explained that although the gift was generous, his old watch already reminded him of everything he never wanted to forget. Vivian understood. Instead of insisting, she asked whether he would allow the company to display the inexpensive watch inside its headquarters as a reminder for future generations. Rowan thought for several moments before agreeing on one condition. The display should never mention his name in large letters. Instead, it should simply read that true value cannot be measured by price because courage, humility, and compassion leave marks far greater than wealth ever could. The chairman loved the idea. Months later, visitors entering Harrow Dynamics encountered a simple glass case in the main lobby. Inside rested an ordinary $12 digital watch with visible scratches. Thousands of guests paused to read the short inscription. Many smiled. Some wiped away quiet tears. Executives from around the world asked why such an inexpensive object occupied the company's most honored display. Every employee knew the answer. Because that watch represented the moment pride surrendered to gratitude. Because it reminded everyone that heroes rarely announce themselves. Because it proved that greatness often arrives wearing ordinary clothes. Years later, after Graham peacefully retired, he publicly credited Rowan not only with saving his life decades earlier but with saving the heart of the company itself. He admitted that surviving an accident had given him more years to live, but Rowan's humility had taught everyone how those years should be lived. Vivian often paused beside the display before entering important meetings. Whenever pressure tempted her to judge people too quickly, she looked at the scratched watch and remembered the afternoon when one careless laugh nearly caused her to overlook the finest person in the building. Before we reach the end of this story, take a moment to leave a meaningful comment. Tell us about a time when someone surprised you by proving that true character has nothing to do with appearance, or share the lesson you believe this story teaches. The greatest treasures in life are rarely the ones carrying the highest price tags. They are the quiet acts of courage, the unseen sacrifices, the humble people who expect nothing in return, and the moments when pride gives way to understanding. A cheap watch may never impress the world, but the heart behind it can change lives forever. Rowan never became famous, never chased recognition, and never cared whether people admired what he owned. Instead, he chose kindness over bitterness, humility over revenge, and service over applause. In doing so, he transformed not only one man's future but an entire company filled with people who finally learned that respect should always be earned by character rather than appearance. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May we all remember that the smallest things sometimes carry the greatest miracles, and may we never judge a person's worth by what they wear, but by the goodness they carry within their heart.